Hey guys, it's ViewMasters Reactions, and we're back with a review from the future of Adventure Time Season 7, Episode 5. I also just saw that Episode 6 starts the Stakes miniseries with Marceline, one of my favorite, possibly my favorite, of all the arcs. I don't know, it was really good, but I've never rewatched it. I'm very curious to jump back in, especially since we just saw the last episode of Fiona and Cake. It ties directly into football. It ties directly into the Vampire King and all of that. If a world had gone bad, alternate universes is what Fiona and Cake is dealing with. I don't want to spoil too much of that. But we talked briefly, very briefly, BMO mentioned football being no more. Besides this episode, the only other episode I recall having BMO and football interact of recent memory is in Distant Lands. I remember the BMO episode. BMO interacted with football in that, and it ended up, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Distant Lands, but the BMO episode ended up being a prequel to Adventure Time. We saw a young Finn and Jake, and we saw how BMO first got there to Ooh. So all that was great. But besides this, which I just finished editing, and it's up on YouTube now, all the episodes up in full on Patreon if you didn't already know that. I saw in one of the most recent episodes of Fiona and Cake, there was a giant thread of people talking. Is my mic not up? My mic wasn't down the whole time. Hopefully you heard me all right with my mic up, but there is a whole comment section in the last Fiona and Cake video with people thinking I haven't finished Adventure Time yet, and there's this ongoing chat with all these people like, yeah, that's a damn shame you never finished. I'm like, in every video I say I am done with Adventure Time Distant Lands. That is why we're doing Fiona and Cake. I'm excited that I could jump into Fiona and Cake and actually know everything that's going on. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. It wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense if I got to episode 5 of season 7 and then just stopped and jumped into Fiona and Cake. I mean, maybe somebody would do it. Besides all that, my biggest question, and I said it back then, is we don't really tap much more into football or the inner workings of what is going on with BMO as far as this goes. It's still a possibility, even though I don't think it's a thing, it's still a possibility that football is actually real, especially since now in Fiona and Cake we're dealing with multiverses and stuff like that. Is it possible there is another world? The only thing is, when I was editing the episode, I was really paying attention, trying to see if there was anything I could find. There was one thing I saw where BMO actually did slip up. He was talking to Finn and Jake, I think it was, and BMO did slip up and referred to themselves when they were supposed to be football as BMO or something like that. There was a slip up. So it could just be to show us that it really isn't a thing. Or is BMO just, you know, was it just a glitch in the system? I don't know. But I feel like that was their way of saying this is all in BMO's mind. And that's what I think anyway. But part of me still thinks, because of multiverses and everything else, is it possible that's another world? I paid attention very closely, I feel like, and I never saw other images in the mirror besides what was in the world of us. So it wasn't like Finn walked by at some point and Finn wasn't in the reflection, or Finn had a reflection that was doing something different. There was never anything real in the mirror, like anything physical that was moving around or talking. It was always just a carbon copy of what was in the mirror. So there was never anything to really confirm the situation, but it is possible, is my point. And football, I mean, hey, if anything, it gives comfort to BMO, I feel like, because football is referred to, if I'm not mistaken, as a she, and BMO is mostly referred to as a he. And I always had trouble with that back then too, whether BMO was a girl or a boy or neither. And I feel like it's both, but it depends on what BMO is at the time. Is it BMO? Is it football? I don't know, because we see in Fiona and Cake, more spoiler alerts, that BMO is even Princess Bubblegum says literally football is no more. I haven't seen football in a while. Something like football doesn't exist is gone. I don't remember, but let's jump into what Uncivilized Elk has to say. It's about 4.5 minutes, and then we'll talk more at the end. You guys want to see more of what I do? In the description of every video is a link for Patreon. You'll see every episode of Adventure Time Distant Lands. Fiona and Cake ends this week in 2 days we finished Fiona and Cake season 1. Hopefully we get more. I'm sure we'll get more spin-offs. I did see interviews with the creators and stuff like that, and it sounds like this is successful and they're loving going back into the world without having to tap directly into Finn and Jake's story, because it is pretty much wrapped up in their opinion. Hundreds of other shows: Peaky Blinders, Doctor Who, Person of Interest, Steven Universe, Infinity Train. Go check it out in the description. If not, the review from the future of season 7, episode 5, Football.
Football mixes laughs with pseudo-thriller elements masterfully. The episode is a riot as we switch between the slightly puzzled and laid-back perspective of Finn and Jake watching their friend go through something they don't particularly comprehend, and the perspective of BMO, or Football rather, who is becoming increasingly frightened and unstable. Watching the fast-paced stepwise change as Football transitions from feeling remorse about her backstabbing ways to becoming a threat to herself and others, poor innocent Nepter, that was a delight. The excellent sound design especially helped create and maintain the tension, and I think the viewer felt the pressure whether they were immersed in BMO's fantasy or not. I have to say, I was drawn into BMO's fantasy more and more as the episode went on, and to a slight degree, I even started wondering whether perhaps the mirror world and football could be real. BMO has always been hyper-imaginative, and the mirror conversation is set up in a manner that paints BMO as role-playing with make-believe personas. But BMO's own immersion in his fantasy is so strong that I couldn't help but wonder a little. At this moment in time, I don't doubt that it's all in BMO's head, but I still feel compelled to ask, merely to entertain the notion,
I'm happy I'm not crazy.
What if football in the mirror world were an actual component of reality in the Adventure Time universe?
If they tap
My
into
follow-up question is then, which option is more interesting? Well, is BMO the only person capable of interacting with this world? If so, the difference becomes practically arbitrary. It's a sad philosophical notion, but if only a single individual is capable of detecting the existence of something, it may as well be in that individual's head, because to the rest of the world, it certainly would be. This is assuming there is absolutely no way whatsoever to demonstrate evidence of this something existing. And of course, when this individual realizes nobody else affirms their perception, the individual has to start wondering whether their senses are even reliable, or if they are suffering from an ailment of some form.
And what I thought.
Seeing as how BMO is not yet introspective enough to question his own senses, then the mirror world being real would be less interesting than it being fake. If the world is a fantasy conjured by BMO, it says a lot about BMO's state of mind and imagination, and leaves room for much analysis of our beloved console's mental state. But if this world is real, it says nothing about BMO's state of mind, and it would only be interesting when other characters start interacting with this world, because BMO's lone interactions with the world otherwise would remain the same, be it real or fake. So to move aside from that tangent, I guess this episode is what method acting is all about. Getting so into your role that you believe it is actually unfolding in reality. BMO in a way is the ultimate method actor of his own fantasies, though he did perform a small mistake in keeping the facade up.
He says for you guys to treat her, me.
BMO's method acting results in rage and desire for revenge so strong that it enables him to find methods of moving inside the fantasy mirror world he conjured up that his alternate persona, despite being incredibly lonely, was not able to figure out. I guess. This actually gets rather confusing when you talk about it like a fantasy while keeping in mind that BMO is so immersed in it, it may as well be real. The bottom line here is simply that I really liked this scenario. Finn and Jake were awesome family in this episode.
I thought they were.
I was proud of my boys.
The way they treated
when they assume BMO wants to take on a new identity, they are down with it, and they try their best to keep up and call football what she desires to be called.
That's great, BMO. Football. Oh, right. Football.
They start showing concern as Football gains signs of being depressed and acting strangely, but before then, they are unironically supportive of Football and the choices she makes about her identity. This level of support for a sudden shift in identity was amazing to see. We also get what must be my favorite joke so far this season.
Hey Jake, BMO went all hog wild in the bathroom.
Gross!
Seriously, the BMO masturbation jokes never fail to make me burst out laughing. So yep, I had a good amount of fun with this episode. Personally, I liked it more than I did BMO Noir, but less than the episode where BMO kidnaps a baby and marries Air. I'm curious whether BMO's imagination-fueled tirades will build up into anything grander in the future.
I liked it better than the episode where he kidnaps a baby and marries Air. Yes, I would have to say that was a very bizarre episode. I did love BMO Noir. I thought the BMO Noir episode was great. But I would probably say this was a very cool episode, the football episode in general, even though it gets my mind thinking 100 different things. And I'm happy to see that Uncivilized Elk was going even deeper into what I was saying. I didn't want to go too crazy into like a 20-minute discussion of what my mind actually thought is capable or possible with BMO and football. But I was kind of just like giving the background or like, you know, the finer points of it. He was going way into it, and that was literally what I was thinking. If this is a world, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not crazy, he was saying at some point you'd have to see other people interacting in the mirror. Like at some point, unless BMO isolates themselves, at what point do we see interactions with other people, and then do those interactions affect different things? Is it possibly a world? They even said that they didn't think it themselves. Like, I don't think that is the case. If I had to bet money on it, I'd say it's just in BMO's head. But what if? What are the possibilities? And if it is the case, what's more likely to be entertaining? Having a real world or having it be in the mind of a thing that has just created it and is following these rules almost to a T, even though they did also point out the mistake. There was a mistake, but you could chalk that up to a glitch in the system because it is coming out of the same person. So maybe it's like a glitch. You could chalk it up to that possibly. Either way, really cool stuff. I love that Uncivilized Elk tapped into a bunch of it. And the fact that Finn and Jake were so understanding of it all. You could clearly see, regardless if it's real or not, that BMO was dealing with some shit. So Finn and Jake immediately acknowledge this. Oh, you want to be football? We get it. How you doing, football? Everything's cool? All right, so don't break up our house with a shillelagh, though, because that's where we got to draw the line, and that's where we're like, yo, calm down. But in the end, it seemed like BMO, even though running around anxiety-ridden and climbing to the roof, knew what was better in the long run, possibly. I don't know. I also thought gigantic reflection of BMO with the cone on the head looked very much like a wizard of sorts. Was that supposed to be some sort of comparison there? Because BMO was very frightened, obviously. It looked ominous, don't get me wrong, but then flipped off the roof and we go into the pond and everything is cool. And like I said, that's pretty much the last we've seen of it. I also acknowledged in the last review we did that I have to remember that Uncivilized Elk hasn't seen beyond this. I am almost positive. They were watching this as it aired, so they don't know what is to come and how much further this progresses, if at all, and we do. I pretty much summed up what becomes of football and what is football. It's kind of never confirmed. But this week, we are finishing Fiona and Cake, the final 2 episodes. We aren't going to have a review from episode 6 to 13, which is 8 episodes. It's all in one review from Uncivilized Elk. 35 minutes. 8 episodes, all in one review, the entire Stakes miniseries. So I'm going to wait until we finish all 8 of those. After all 8 episodes, we will do one giant video of the review of the Stakes miniseries along with Uncivilized Elk. So don't expect a review next week or the next couple weeks. Maybe to fill in the blanks, we'll do reviews of Fiona and Cake, because I saw Uncivilized Elk was doing reviews of that and I haven't watched them yet. You guys let me know if we should do that. And beyond that, we'll end up doing the review on this at some point in the near future. Love this episode. You guys let me know what you think. You guys let me know what you think of football. BMO is one of my favorites. I totally forgot, if you look right here, is a little Funko Pop of BMO. I'm pretty sure it's an exclusive one too, where it's like BMO as Robin Hood, but either way, I am a massive fan. Have tons of stuff. You want to see more of what I do? In the description of every video is a link for Patreon. You'll see every episode of Adventure Time, Distant Lands, Fiona and Cake. It ends this week. It comes out 3 a.m. I usually have it on Patreon by 6 a.m. and then I start editing them up out on YouTube by noon, but it's got to be highly edited up because of copyright. Hundreds of other movies and shows: Peaky Blinders, Doctor Who, Steven Universe, Infinity Train, Agretsuko, Hilda. The Owl House is coming out 2 episodes a week. Check in the description, full unedited episodes of all of it. If not, comments down below, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.